Simon, I don't know about you, but every time I start composing a new piece, I always feel as though I'm starting for the first time, that I've never done it before. It's a weird experience, but then once I get into it and the sort of compositional muscles start being exercised, it gets much easier. Do you find the same sort of thing?
Absolutely. It's getting the kernel of an idea at the beginning. You stare at a blank piece of paper and you just think, oh my gosh, where do I start?
That's right, absolutely.
So here's a question straight away. Both of us, we both more than dabble in composition, but do you normally start with music or do you start with words?
Well, I normally start with words, and it's normally the words that inspire.
Yeah.
I must admit. I mean, I have more recently been writing instrumental music.
Right. Okay.
And it was almost like learning to compose again. Because I've always used the text as that that inspiring point, really. And suddenly you haven't got that. You've got to get your ideas via another source. But do you find, I sometimes find with words, if they really speak to me, I can sort of hear the music going on as I read the words. Do you find this?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you get a good text that, as you say, is very inspiring, quite often the music comes quite naturally. Yeah. And then you have to sort of tweak it and work at it a bit. But I certainly that is a good way of starting off. And so choosing. I mean, sometimes if somebody asks you to write something, they give you a text. But otherwise, it's really important, isn't it, to choose a text that's really going to work, that you think.
Yeah, and I do prefer choosing my own texts
to
having one given to me. I mean, sometimes people will send you a text and say, can you set this, and it's fine. Other times, you can wrestle with it for ages and it just doesn't provide the inspiration that you want.
So tell us, how did you start in the first place? Because, I mean, your catalogue now is quite epic. But where did it all start for you?
I suppose it started when I was at school. I can remember when I was about 11 writing a piece called Cat and Mouse, it was called.
Tom and Jerry.
Yes, it was a piano piece, and I played it in a school concert. I didn't write it down, it was entirely improvised. Oh, right. But every time I played it, it was the same,
Oh, that's it.
So it wasn't improvised to that extent. But then a bit later, I wrote a carol. And of course, long before the days of Sibelius and all that sort of stuff.
Or handwritten.
Well, yes, and I could remember getting. Do you remember those Gestetner machines?
Oh, yeah.
I had to get one of these Gestetner, like carbon. Those are like carbon. I had to draw the lines on it, and then I had to write the notes and then make sure I didn't make a mistake. Otherwise, I'd have to start again. So, I mean, what a rigmarole that was, having to do that. I don't know how we ever survived without music software like Sibelius.
I know. And it's interesting. I'd like to know how many composers do actually still write by hand. I know some certainly do.
I always start with manuscript paper.
Yeah.
I must admit. Yeah. And then go onto the software later. I think there was one occasion when I did go straight onto Sibelius, and it was when I was writing an orchestral piece. But to be honest, it was just to save a huge amount of time, because writing out a full score, as all the great composers did, why we grumble, I don't know. But, actually being able to go straight onto Sibelius was a huge advantage.
Yeah, I always used to think about people like Haydn and think, 104 or whatever it is, 104 symphonies. If he didn't actually have to think about the content, if he just literally had to write them out, that's enough.
I know.
Never mind thinking all the genius
and
motifs.
Wagner.
And Wagner, I know. It's just like...
It's just extraordinary.
Whoa.
To think about that.
But did you find, working in the church then, that you wrote quite a lot for your own cathedral choirs?
Yeah, I did, very much so. And in fact, I can remember one occasion when I was at Bristol Cathedral. We had a law service come up, where all the beginning of the legal year or whatever, happened every year. And I remember the presenter coming to me in about April, this service was like October, coming to me in April saying, we need an anthem for the law service, because they want it now so they can go to press. So I just said, Judge Eternal by Archer, you see, and... because I hadn't written it.
Yeah.
But then about a week before the service, I'd completely forgotten.
You hadn't written.
I hadn't composed it. No, I just
no.
said Judge Eternal by Archer.
Yeah.
I'll compose it at some point.
Yeah.
And then completely forgotten that I'd said
Excellent.
that.
Excellent.
And I think it was about a week, maybe less than a week before, I suddenly got the proof, and to my horror,
There it was.
there it was. So I had to write Judge Eternal, but I did it.
The white heat of desperation leads to inspiration.
It really was. It really was.
Well, I can almost tell a story like that because when I was at St Mary's Warwick, we were very blessed that we used to get invited to do the BBC Choral Evensong most years. And one year we were doing an Epiphany one, and the producer asked me about an introit. And I said, and she said to me, it would be really nice if we had a bit of your music. So I said, fine, and I particularly like Christina Rossetti, so I found a poem by Christina Rossetti, and I called it The Journey. And this was not a long time before the broadcast was due. Anyway, cut a long story short, it appeared in the Radio Times before I'd written a note. And I remember, as you said earlier, I mean, because the text was so wonderful, I remember a tune came to me really quite quickly, and I remember taking it to save time. I took it to the boys and said, right, have a sing through this, what do you think? And some kid put his hand up and said, sir, that sounds just like something else. So back to the drawing board a bit. But again, you know, the white heat of desperation does provide inspiration.
I know, I know. It's extraordinary.
And what about, I was going to ask you about keys, because looking at, you know, as composers, we write music because we want people to perform it. But there is a question if you write particularly for parish choirs or less able choirs, non-professional choirs, that if you make the music too hard, or indeed if you make the accompaniment too hard, you know, people can't play it. And therefore, and I certainly have written a number of pieces where I've written them, as my friends will tell you, in certain number of flats or certain number of sharps, but usually flats, and people would then say, well, actually, I can't play it. If you put that in G major rather than G flat, you'd have sold more copies.
Yes, there's a lot of truth in that. Although sometimes flat keys work beautifully for voices.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean,
why,
John Rutter's lovely, I can't remember which carol it is now, that's in G flat major.
Most of them.
Yes. But you know, it's absolutely gorgeous key for voices.
It's so wonderful, and it's such a warm key.
Warm key.
But how can you, as a musician? I mean, you know, we can talk aesthetically about things like that, warm keys, but at the end of the day, we also want people to buy our music.
Yes, that's right. I mean, I tend to write a lot in E flat major for voices and F major. Yeah. I'm always very conscious about not having too many high notes in a piece. Yeah. I'm also very conscious about not putting bright vowels on high notes. Because as you know, they can easily shriek, can't they? So it's thinking very, very much in those terms.
So if you get invited to do a commission, as we both get invited from time to time, for a choir that you don't know, do you always try and go and listen to the choir, or at least get a recording of the choir so you get a rough
I tend to
idea?
go on YouTube these days and just see if there's a recording of them that I can hear. Sometimes there isn't, and you have to then sort of get a little bit of a lead from the choir master about the sort of standard that they're expecting. But it's good to find if there is a recording of them. And also, you know, sometimes you want to, or the director of music of the church wants you to expose a particular voice. You know, they may have a very good tenor or a very good soprano, and they say it's fine for you to write a solo if you want to. So it's good to have that sort of information.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, I mean, I got asked to write a piece quite recently for a choir in North Carolina, and it was actually to commemorate, well, not commemorate, but to mark the retirement of a previous director of music who'd been there for like 50 years, and he was now in ill health, and they asked me to write this piece. And the choir master gave me an idea of the choir, but he said, my only particular requirement is that this chap, he and his wife used to go to Scotland every year. So could you sneak something Scottish in. So I read this piece and I worked out that I did an amen at the end, a sort of polyphonic amen, and I worked out that I could pop Auld Lang Syne into this in the tenors. So,
excellent.
Which apparently they quite enjoyed. But
I did an arrangement once of the 12 Days of Christmas.
Yeah.
And when it got to the pipers piping, I can't remember how many pipers piping, I managed to get... underneath.
Shameful.
So, yes, I know. It's there. It's quite subtle, so you have to listen for it. But yeah, have you got any commissions at the moment?
Yeah, funnily enough, actually, I'm writing a piece for Salisbury Cathedral Youth Choir.
Oh, wonderful!
Starting on "Teach Me, O Lord," which is quite a lot of fun. In fact, I have to finish it next week. I think. So next week,
nice text.
Nice text, yeah. And it's and David Halls was really quite specific about what he wanted, and it, piano accompaniment, but that could be played on the organ, not too hard, tuneful, quite sort of laid back.
You can split into parts. Is it
split
SAT,
into parts?
SAT?
No, just upper voices. So just two treble parts.
Yeah. Fabulous.
Mainly unison with a bit of treble. So I mean that's would be quite nice. And I remember you telling me that you're writing a whole evensong virtually.
Well, I've got this huge commission actually from a church in Augusta, Georgia. Oh. It's their 275th anniversary, and they want me to write a set of responses, which I've actually done now, and a Magan Nunc and an anthem. So, and then I'm going over in November to conduct the whole thing. Oh. So I've just finished the Magnificat actually yesterday. And I've got to get going on the Nunc, but it's a huge amount of work.
That's massive. You need to get some sort of golf thing in with that, don't you? Doesn't the Masters?
It is.
Augusta.
It's a big place, isn't it?
Yeah.
And am I right? It's not Augusta where Coca-Cola have a factory, is it?
I don't know.
Or am I mixing it up with something?
Because if it was, we'll check it out, because you could put a little motif in somewhere.
Get them to sponsor
it is very nice, isn't it, when you get invited to conduct the first performance. I mean, I've been to some lovely places because people have said, sometimes you sort of drop a hint and say, well, I'd be quite happy to come over there and sort of... Yes. I do remember years ago writing a big piece for a choir in Florida, and they invited me to go out and conduct the first performance and do a couple of rehearsals beforehand. And the chap said to me, and it was with brass organ and choir, and then the chap said to me, well, we'll have learnt it, and if you could just sort of polish a few corners. Well, when I got there, I don't know about polishing a few corners, I had to put the blooming scaffolding up. It was a bit...
I have encountered that sort of situation before.
I'm not mentioning any names or
no,
anything.
Of course not.
And it all worked out in the end, but
I'm sure.
That's all quite good fun. But,
but it's one of the wonderful things about writing over there is they have the resources to be able to commission. And it would be wonderful if the church over here had the same sorts of resources. I mean, there aren't the funds to do that sort of thing. But it does mean that they're enabling composers to write.
Absolutely. I mean, I do find sometimes it's just nice to write things for the sake of it. I worry sometimes that I've got to the stage where one sort of enjoys doing commissions, and sometimes you do it as a job, and why don't you just write something for the sake of writing it? No other reason.
Because you feel inspired
just
to do
because
that.
Something like that.
I did that some years ago when I wrote my Requiem.
Oh yes.
That wasn't a commission. It was just something I
wanted to do.
And occasionally it's very nice to. Yeah. It's very nice to be free enough to be able to do that.
And do you find now that you're not running choirs like you were, do you do more composing than perhaps you did?
Definitely. It's one of my main sources of income now. Yeah. But I'm doing a lot more writing than I was. And actually a lot more piano accompaniment.
Oh, right,
I love playing the piano, and I'm really enjoying doing lots of piano accompaniment as well. And I have these instruments here which I can practice on, which helps. So
yes, you've got a choice. I think you can probably on Monday you can play on that one, on Tuesday here, and Wednesday. For those
keeping
people...
them all in tune is a challenge,
but well, I mean, it's a lot of fun. I mean, I enjoy composing, and I'm sure you do, and I'm sure you'll keep doing it and churning out lots of wonderful stuff. You've written some music for me too, which has always been lovely. And
but your stuff is so approachable and wonderful and
cheesy is the word.
Well, maybe we all come out of the same mould in a way, I think.
I think
accessibility.
Accessibility, and I think most choirs like a tune, and I sometimes go through my blue periods and I try and do something completely off the radar. But generally, I just like to write nice melodic tunes.
I must admit, back in the 90s, I used to feel quite guilty about the fact that what I was writing was basically a bit out of date. Very tuneful and all of that. And I think we were still living in the sort of aftermath of very avant-garde musical styles.
Second view.
Everybody felt that they had to somehow conform to that. And I'm quite grateful that now people are tending to write much more tonally.
Yeah, definitely.
Composers in general are writing much more tonally.
Yeah,
because I think they realise that music's a language, and at the end of the day, if you're not communicating with your audience,
absolutely,
you're missing out.
Yeah. But we'll keep doing it.
We'll keep doing it. We'll keep doing it. Absolutely.
Great.